Hey, what's up and welcome back to Interpreting the Scares. That's right. We're moving right along in our October journey of nightmares with the third film in the massive Hellraiser series, and this one is called Hellraiser III, Hell on Earth. The third Hellraiser film follows Joey Summerskill, a local news reporter that randomly comes across a victim of Pinhead and the rest of the Cenobites, and so she begins to write a story on it. Meanwhile, Pinhead tries to come back into power after being trapped inside the Pillar of Souls, and to return, he must do as the others before him have done, and consume the souls of the innocent, and not so innocent, as long as they have souls. What can I say? We're 8 days into this month, and already on the third Hellraiser film. That should tell you how many movies in this series there are. The third film I was probably the most weary of because that's a pretty solid number for a lot of horror films to kind of give people a good idea on where the series is headed. And for me, I personally really like this movie and I consider it to be better than the second. No, the acting isn't really all that great, but the story finally did something a little bit different. And it's that difference that I think worked wonders. So the second film was mostly the same exact idea as the first, just with a few added elements of the hell dimension that the Cenobites are from. And the movie itself, it was fine, but it didn't really make a huge impression on me. The third film changed things up quite a bit by getting rid of the same family that we saw in the first two movies, and it introduced this news reporter, and what really impressed me here was that Pinhead himself was essentially stepping into the role of the desperate character trying to come back from the dead, and he needed the help from a living person. That alone was pretty cool. And then they start diving into the idea that the personalities between the innocent guy who originally turned into Pinhead and Pinhead himself split in this film. And finally, the part of the title that's relevant, Hell on Earth. There's one moment in this film that's absolutely bonkers, and I don't want to outright give it away, but I can tell you that it's preceded with a very delighted Pinhead saying, "Shall we begin?" What follows is insane, and I love every second of it because I'm a twisted individual. Anyways, this film proved that the series has places that it still wants to go and stories that it still wants to tell. And the best thing about that is that this film doesn't really act like a modern horror sequel in which it gets too convoluted trying to be bigger and better than it was before. Because it's still relatively straightforward. Heck, most of the film plays out pretty slowly as it kind of mirrors that of the first film in terms of a slow building yet still tense horror film. Now I'm guessing that the series will eventually find an absolutely trashy sequel. I feel like that's inevitable. But so far, I've mostly been impressed by the series, which is still killing it with practical effects for not only just the gore, but the creative uses of violence that, in a way, put Saw to shame. Also, before I forget to mention it, I won't explain specifically what happens at the end, but I love the tease that they give off by the very tail end of this film, and I am crossing my fingers hoping that it plays a pretty big part in the fourth film, but only time can tell. Alright, enough positives, let's talk about how bad the movie is. Or not, because it's not bad. It has issues, of course, with some of the performances. This was early 90s horror, and that's honestly a period of time that is incredibly corny as is. It's hard to get right with any genre, let alone horror. Every now and then, we will find a great 90s horror flick, but, a majority of them are just too corny to ignore. Thankfully, the corniness in this film mostly comes down to the human performances. Some of the dream sequences that I feel like were a little bit too much, and of course, that all comes with some corny dialogue as well. But what helps with that is Pinhead, because Pinhead so far has always had a way of speaking that goes beyond a period of time. It's just haunting in a way. The first film he said, "I'll tear your soul apart." This one he says, "Shall we begin?" I'm not sure about the second one because, again, nothing about the second film stood out to me that much. So all in all, I enjoyed this movie. I thought it was a good time, and I'm still looking forward to watching part 4. When it comes down to my unbiased score, I think that the film is made pretty well, still mostly in visuals because of production design and the look of the Pillar of Souls and the look of the Cenobites. A little bit of the technical score goes into the concept since they did decide to change things up a little bit. They're definitely writing for the future of the series, but a majority of everything else was business as usual, so this technical score is 70%. My bias score is quite a bit higher again because I had a good time with this movie. I didn't know if I would, but here we are. This is a decent horror film from the 90s at the end of the day, and I'm intrigued to see where we go from here. This bias score is 88%, and when we combine the two scores together, we come to the final rating of 79%. 79 out of 100 possible stars, or a B letter grade. If you're curious on where I rank this in the Hellraiser series so far, it's in second place. What about you guys though? Have you seen the third Hellraiser film? And if so, let me know what you thought about it in the comment section down below. And as for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit that like, subscribe button, and bell to be notified when I come out with my next review. And until then, peace out!
Dave examines movies we just watch for fun. Davey is the expert. He is the